Thank you for joining us today for 3 disruptive models that deliver healthy food to everyone, everywhere. This is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. I think it's something that everyone in the natural products industry should be thinking about, this idea of access and how we can bring more health to more people. I'm really excited today to look at these extremely innovative models that we'll be exploring that really show that there are so many different ways that we can do this. Over the past few years, it's been really inspiring to see companies of big and small sizes coming together to do incredible things and collaborating, working with each other to share ideas about how we can fix our food system. One of the ways that we've been exploring these topics at New Hope Network is through tracks like this and education at Expo West, through Feeding the Good Food Future, which is a content program that I run at New Hope, which explores these topics through digital content, as well as through Escabona. And if you don't know about Escabona, I urge you to learn a little bit more. It's a great conference that we do in Texas, in Austin, Texas, which is a great place to go, and that's every October. So please learn more about that, and we'd love to see you there. I do want to thank our sponsors, 301 Inc. and Beyond Brands. These companies have done amazing things to invest in making a difference in our food system. We've seen it firsthand, and they're just 2 of the many companies and organizations that are really contributing to this movement. So when I was on the plane out here from Colorado, I sort of assumed that everyone on my plane is going to be going to Expo West, because that seems to be the case. I see all of my old friends, and we can talk about things that are happening in the industry. But this year when I was on the plane, well, the woman to my left was in the industry, and the man to my right was not in the industry, and he worked in what he said was a very different industry, and it was in convenience. So he talked about how he works in distribution for the convenience industry, so Loaf and Jug and 7-Eleven. So the more we talked, the more we realized that there were so many synergies between what we were doing. And he discussed the ways in which he's working with more and more natural products companies, how he wants to get more involved with what we're doing at New Hope. And it was a really eye-opening conversation, because it was one of the ways that healthier products can get to more people is through the convenience channel. I thought that was so interesting that I was having that conversation on my way here to do this session, and of course it just seemed natural to represent what he's doing and what many different types of organizations are. So with that, I want to represent our amazing panel and introduce them and what they're doing. Mara Fleischman is right here, who is my neighbor in Boulder, Colorado. Got involved at the Chef Ann Foundation, where she is now the Chief Executive Officer, as a concerned parent. I think so many of us get into this industry for that reason. She started as the board of directors when the Chef Ann Foundation launched, and since then has become the CEO. With nearly 20 years experience working in natural products, she has 12 years at Whole Foods Market, where she most recently served as the National Director of Partnerships, and has held board seats at the Grow Foundation, the Kitchen Community, and Naturally Boulder. When we talked on the phone, she said something that really resonated with me, and that this audience here wants to know what's next and what are the things that we can do to continue to push the envelope as the Chef Ann Foundation is doing, which we'll learn more about. Kathleen Baumgardner is the co-founder and executive director of FOCO Cafe, which is a volunteer-driven nonprofit cafe in Fort Collins, Colorado. The FOCO Cafe has served more than 49,000 fresh, organic, and primarily locally sourced meals since opening in 2014. And we'll learn a lot more about that, so I won't give too much away, but it's such a cool concept. And in our earlier conversation, she said when it comes to access and this type of model, everyone thinks about soup kitchens, and we are not that. And they definitely are not, so it's exciting to hear what they're doing. And finally, we have Jessica Pouch, who is the founder and CEO of Mesh Exchange. She's a 4-time entrepreneur, a certified B Corp consultant, and a strategist for leaders in business innovation. She has helped build over a dozen social enterprises, including her own, which are EcoTrek Tours and Social Impact Technology Accelerator. For 9 years, she's also served as the vice chair of CASAO, which is a Kenyan-based charity focusing on entrepreneurial pursuits in areas of food security, health, and education. So welcome to our panelists, and Mara, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hello. So great to see you guys here. I love to see the people that come to Expo and come to these kinds of discussions. So thanks for coming and listening to how we can provide access to, for healthy food to everyone. I'm going to talk about school food, and particularly I'm going to be talking about school food trucks. But before I do, I want to just tell you a little bit about how I got to where I am. Because I'm a veteran natural products industry person, so this whole presentation is created to sway everyone over to school food reform by the end of it. So this over here is my daughter Lucy, when she was 5 years old, my daughter Lucy at about 14. I moved from Boston, Massachusetts to Boulder, Colorado in 2006. And when I did, I really thought I was kind of moving to the Mecca land, right? To the land of Lohas, where everything was going to be natural and healthy, and I was really excited. I went to have school lunch with my daughter, who was in kindergarten at the time, and she was served processed French toast sticks that looked much like that picture over there, with a packet of maple syrup that actually had no syrup in it whatsoever. And on the side was pears in a syrupy sauce. So I looked around the lunchroom, and it was all kindergartners. This particular lunchroom happened to be more boys than girls, so the energy level was kind of through the roof as it was. And I knew my daughter had about 30 kids in her kindergarten class with one teacher, and I looked at that lunch and I thought, how is this teacher ever going to teach these kids to read, which is what you learn in kindergarten after this lunch? So I started to work with a group of parents and community members. Oh, there we go. He said this was going to happen. I started to work with a group of parents and community members to try and change school food. We were working with the district, and it was going nowhere. And someone said, we have to bring out the renegade lunch lady. And we were all like, who's the renegade lunch lady? So the renegade lunch lady was Chef Ann Cooper, and she was in Berkeley, California, currently changing the school food program. So Ann came out, and she explained to us how the thing we have to do is we have to start cooking. And it was like gospel. We were like, what? She said, you're serving all this packaged stuff. We have to set your schools up to cook. That's how you're going to procure the best ingredients, serve the best food. She says it's complicated. It's going to be painful. It's going to take a long time, but it is the way for sustainable, healthy food in schools. So we did, and I am proud to say that over here, this is Lucy. She's in high school now. This is a few years ago. This is an average meal that we serve in Boulder Valley School District now, which is a tofu and rice bowl. We have beans and broccoli. We have salad bars in every school. It's taken 5+ years, but we're there. And that has been really exciting. So, you know, during this whole process, I was at Whole Foods. I was a national director of partnerships. And, you know, progressively, as I was working on it in Boulder, I started thinking, it started kind of itching at me, like, you know, all the things I was always getting super excited about at work, like, you know, the next, you know, level of, you know, clean beef, or, you know, new criteria around sustainable seafood. It was great. There was something that was saying to me, how can I continue to get so excited about this when I know that kids all across America are eating this crappy food every day in school? And it was really a social justice thing, because I knew I could I was going to go to Whole Foods, and I was going to, if I didn't like that lunch, I was going to pack my daughter, you know, great healthy food, probably organic fruits and vegetables, you know, hormone and antibiotic-free meat, turkey, and, you know, no nitrates. But yeah, my daughter was going to show up to school, and it wasn't going to be an even playing field, because these other kids were going to eat this other food, and it really is social justice. So in 2013, I left. I left to take on school food reform permanently. And I'm really happy that I did. I work for the Chef Ann Foundation. That is the renegade lunch lady. So Chef Ann Cooper, who's now the food service director in Boulder Valley School District, she kind of said to herself, if I keep moving from district to district, Berkeley to Boulder, what's next? I'm never going to make a dent in schools. There's 14,000 districts in the country. It's never going to make a dent. So I have to start this foundation. We have to figure out how to help schools change from processed to cook from scratch program in a more rapid way. And that's what the Chef Ann Foundation does. And currently, we are reaching, with our program, we've reached about 7,000 schools. We're touching about 2.7 million kids. And our programming's in every state of the country. It's awesome. I'm super proud. But I also know that, there's 100,000 schools out there. So there's a lot that we still have to do. So what's the problem, and how is it linked to school food? Well, we have, obviously everyone in this room knows we have health issues from food in this country, right? And with kids, it's crazy. So, we're seeing obesity rates between 18 and 21% with kids. 1 in 3 kids is on track to get type 2 diabetes in their lifetime. And 60% of kids don't get enough fruit based on the dietary guidelines, and 93% don't get enough vegetables. And this is all leading to the bigger issue. So how can school food play a part in this issue? Because there's a lot going on at home, there's a lot going on culturally. Well, here's the thing, there's 30 million school lunches served every day in America, and 21 million of those lunches are served to kids who are on the free and reduced lunch program. That means that at minimum, their family of 4 earns less than $44,000 a year. That is the very target group that is facing the biggest issue with a diet-related illness. So this program is built, it has the channel to help. We just have to figure out how to make it work. So there's changes happening. It's been happening. Anne was called a renegade lunch lady back in 1999 or 2000. It's not renegade anymore to serve kids fruits and vegetables, but it's still not happening in every school district. But we're getting there. In 2010, we had the most progressive regulations and legislation ever passed in our country. It's called the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act. This legislation was passed and championed by Michelle Obama. And it was so significant. We are still being governed by it today. What will happen, we don't know. But it reduced saturated fat, it increased whole grains, it increased fruits and vegetables, and it reduced sodium. And it has helped us change the program. Now, a lot of what happened is Big Food just took those guidelines and started creating processed food to meet those guidelines, and schools still had a lot of processed food in there. But we're starting to make headway. And the schools that are changing their food, they're wanting to do more. So you guys think about this. For those of you who have product companies, think about all you do to put your product together, all the great ingredients that you put into it. If you didn't have the packaging to tell the story, what would the worth be? And that's what schools are facing. Schools that are making change are still in the trenches with that old school food brand, and they need some way to tell the story of the changes that they're making. That's where food trucks can come in. So, it's funny, this whole presentation is about disruptive models, and when they asked me to speak about food trucks, which is a disruptive model within school food. But actually, cooking from scratch is a disruptive model in school food, because it's not happening. It's weird that it would be, but it's not happening. So school food trucks, they actually provide a lot of avenues for people. And they're starting to happen. It's kind of like, where Natural Products was about 20 years ago, right? It's starting to happen little by little. But what they're able to do, what they bring to the table, is they're really able to increase participation in 9 through 12. So we have an issue. Once a child goes to high school, a lot of times they're faced with open campus. So open campus, so kid gets in, my daughter got into 9th grade last year, open campus, woo, what am I gonna get? Dippin' Dots, pizza, candy bars, whatever, it's like, free time for everything. That's not the only issue. The other issue is that kids that are on the free and reduced lunch plan are stuck in that cafeteria. So that social divide becomes wider, right? So I'm not going off campus, I've got to use my free and reduced lunch, I got to stay, people in the lunchroom there are low income. The food truck actually provides an opportunity to give people the off-campus, to give high schoolers the off-campus feel, excuse me, and to bridge those two communities together, along with being able to bring the food truck out into your community and talk about what's going on in school food. At events, parents, try what's being served at schools. So this right here is a food truck at Boulder High School. Boulder Valley School District is an operating partner of ours, so we pick Minneapolis as an operating partner of ours. We pick school districts that are creating change, that are doing innovative programming, and we work with them to pull those operational programs out and reproduce them and resources and tools and funding for schools across the country. This is just an example of some of the things that are being served on the food truck at Boulder Valley School District. Now remember, the food truck still has to meet the National School Lunch regulations, the USDA compliance, which is next to impossible. It's very hard because you only have about $1.25 in food costs per meal for protein, grains, fruit and vegetables, milk. You got to do it all. But it can be done. So don't ever listen to someone who says it can't, because it can, and we're doing it with schools across the country. So this, excuse me, this right here, you can see those are pork tamales actually made by a local vendor in Boulder. And the school district worked with them to make sure that those tamales would meet the USDA regulations. They also make quinoa burgers, my daughter's favorite, the buffalo chicken grilled cheese, and a local beef burger with sweet potato fries. Yes, you can have a local beef burger with sweet potato fries on a school lunch menu, and you can do it and cook it from scratch for $1.25. And here's the kids, right? So we've created this place where they can kind of come together where you don't see that divide. There's a lot of things to consider when a school is going to operate a food truck. So Boulder Valley School District produces about 13,000 meals a day. For anyone who in the restaurant industry who understands what producing 13,000 meals a day looks like, it's complicated. And to procure food for 13,000 meals and then to serve it off of a food truck becomes really complicated. So the Chef Ann Foundation is really here to help schools reach their goals, but they have to think. You can do a lot of different models. You can do full cook, partial cook, and even some districts like Minneapolis are doing package and serve because their district is so large. So what we're doing now is we're in the process of raising funds to produce this program for schools, because we're getting more and more schools that are requesting support in implementing a food truck, because they're getting their program to that point where they're ready to talk about it to their community. They have to get the community on board. A school food program is only sustainable based on participation and based on the stakeholders within that community supporting it. And so that's why it's really important to support schools that are trying to push it forward, to move the needle. What this program will encompass when we finally launch it, we will have case studies for Boulder Valley, probably for Minneapolis, and we will pull out cost analysis tools, design and layout tools, general operation guidelines, food truck recipes, so that's really complicated. Human resource information, how does this affect the larger labor initiative in a school food service kitchen? And then catering. So once you launch your food truck, you're able to kind of launch a catering arm of your school food operation, which actually provides some supplemental income for the marketing components of your initiative. And then also technical assistance. We have school food operators that actually work to help a school implement the program and get to the place, source it out, and then we also can provide them the funding for the truck. So this is what we're trying to get to. For those of you who want to break in natural foods and want to come over to school food reform, I can tell you why it's so awesome. And thank you for listening to me today. You're next.
Hello. Nearly 5 years ago, my husband and I set out to open a nonprofit cafe. Now, we imagined a place where people could access a healthy meal and be welcome. And you could walk in and you could pay what you can. You could pay what you'd normally pay for a comparable meal. You could pay it forward so others might eat. Or you could make your contribution with time and talent and volunteer. Our goal really was to build community. And we wanted to do that through food, real food. So it took us about 2.5 years, and it was a wonderful meld of community that made this happen, a few struggles along the way, and a lot of hard work. But 2.5 years, and we opened the Foco Cafe. Now, since that day, we have now served 50,000 meals. We actually hit that mark on Tuesday. We've offered thousands of hours of volunteer opportunities, and we've worked side by side with people from all walks of life. When people come to the cafe, there are no prices. We have a blind payment system, so people make their donation and set their own price for that food. It's really been quite an amazing experience. Right now, the cafe has 6 interns, and for every intern, I encourage them to write at least 1 grant. And I had a meeting just last week with our newest intern, Danielle, and we were discussing her grant. And she was really connecting the dots of the cafe concept. It was fascinating to watch. She was so frustrated. She said, they ask for data points that we can't provide. And I said, that's right. That's because we don't operate like typical nonprofits. We disrupt that model. And then she said, they ask for a profile of our clients. And I said, yes. And she said, but our clients are everyone. We serve everyone and we help everyone. And I said, that's right. That's the secret of our success. You see, we create and serve beautiful small batch meals, and they're made with organic ingredients. They are locally sourced as possible. We serve gluten-free, dairy-free, and vegan offerings every day. We do this, we prepare them and serve them in an environmentally sound fashion. We do this in a beautiful historic building, and we do it on a donation-only basis. But what's really amazing is what we hear about the environment, the community that's built in the process of doing this. We are volunteer-driven. So what we see many times with food-related nonprofits is they focus on one population that may have a primary need, let's say a financial need. But what we believe is that serving all people, including those with a financial need, really covers a primary need that's just as basic as food. And let me tell you a story. When I'm at the cafe, I always greet people by name. I get to know them because every time I eat at the cafe, it's my goal to sit with someone I've never met before. So I walk up to people and ask if I can join them for lunch. So one day there was an older woman, an elderly woman, who was leaving the cafe. She'd just finished lunch, and she sought me out. Now, I had had lunch with her weeks before, and she came up to me and she said, I wanted to thank you. And I said, okay. And she said, I want to thank you for saying hello to me when I walked in. And I must have looked at her quizzically, because then she explained. She said, I don't think that I've heard anyone use my name in months. We believe that connection is a primary need. So our guests and our volunteers include our mayor, young families living in their cars, business people, retirees, homeless members of our community, people from all walks of life. The cafe, it's a place where all people are welcome, where all people are treated with dignity and all people are valued. We have volunteers, especially those living in poverty and homelessness, that have told us that they forgot that they could make a difference. But it doesn't matter where you lay your head at night, how old you are, how much money you have in your pocket. If you participate, you can make the world a better place. Now, before 5 years ago, Jeff and I never even imagined opening up a restaurant, let alone a nonprofit cafe. Neither of us have a restaurant background. My husband, Jeff, who's sitting right up here, he had been a waiter for 1 year, and I'd never worked in a restaurant in my life. But we believe very strongly that all people deserve access to healthy food and the opportunity to give back. So we started this journey and kind of invited the community to come along. And the community listened and got behind us, and they helped us to make this happen. We opened up this restaurant with no debt. It's really quite amazing. And what's happening now is even more fascinating. People are starting to innovate through the cafe. So last summer, I hosted a youth group that was doing service projects at the cafe. And every time I have a group that comes in, which is quite often, I give a tour, I talk about our mission, and I also go into food waste as well, because we have very strong feelings about food waste. So when we're prepping for meals, there's going to be some waste, but we treat our ingredients with the utmost respect. And we do have some prep waste, and that is actually all saved, and that's provided to community members who have chickens. So it becomes chicken food. And then when we plate our meals, we actually plate them with the guest. They can have anything they want. They can have every soup. We actually serve soup flights. So they can pick every soup, they can pick a little of every salad. Every plate that we serve is going to be different than the last. It's fascinating. And then we also encourage people to come back for seconds if they're still hungry. So hence our plate waste is very, very small. But what plate waste we do have goes to worm compost. So we are not sending any food to the landfill. So what happened was I met with a young woman who was the chaperone for this group, and she really connected with the idea of food waste. And she said, I want to work with you on a project. So between us, we came up with this idea for the FOCO Fridge. The Fridge is a free refrigerator that lives on our patio. It's outside. And it is community driven. So this is a refrigerator where people bring food, and that is fresh fruits and vegetables, that they fear might go to waste, and anyone can take them free of charge. So we have people whose gardens are overproducing. They are dropping off food all the time during the harvest season, or herbs, things like that. We have people who have overpurchased fresh foods at the grocery. We have folks who are traveling and they fear that food left in their home will go to waste. Just this last week, we had a woman who dropped off her entire CSA share because she was going on vacation. So that food gets back into the community and gets used. I've seen some amazing things happen with the Fridge. One, it's opened a discussion for people to actually talk about food waste. Second, we've seen people starting to cook again, which is invaluable. And also, it has helped people to kind of take chances that they might not otherwise. I have seen young people standing in front of the Fridge, holding on to patty pan squash, putting their heads together and going, what the heck is this? And then deciding to take it home and try to make a meal out of it. I mean, that really has value. And what we're seeing now, too, is that people are reaching out to us. They are talking to us about bringing cafes to their communities in many, many other states. Pretty much weekly, we get calls for, to set up meetings and conference calls with groups that are interested in this cafe model. But we also are having other people bring their passion projects forward just to ask for advice on where to start. And what's really exciting about this is they're out of the box and disruptive. Thank you.
How does this work? So
This.
all right. All right. Hi, everybody. So my name is Jessica. I'm from Vancouver, Canada. And this is the problem that we're seeking to solve. Right now, 1 in 8 people in North America are food insecure, meaning they lack the reliable and consistent access to quality and nutritious food. 1 in 8 people, a third of those are which are children. So this is an enormous problem, especially considering the fact that 40% of the food that we grow is never consumed. So that's about $280 billion each year in North America alone, representing 1.3% of the GDP of food that is completely wasted. So half of that exists along the supply chain, and half of that exists with consumers. So it just tells us that there's a tremendous inefficiency from farmers, manufacturers, distributors, and retail. So where there's inefficiency, there's opportunity to enhance that. This picture here, you can't quite see it, but it's a picture of a container full of avocados. And this was rejected at the port in Vancouver. And it went to one of the composters. Because it had the little stickers on the avocados, it actually got rejected from the composter because they didn't have the manpower to de-sticker the avocados, and it went to the landfill. So unfortunately, the landfills, about a third of the food and a third of the capacity of landfills is organic waste. And even worse, half of the food that is thrown out is still edible. So greenhouse gases, 20% of the methane that's emitted into the air is actually from food waste. So it's a tremendous disservice to society, especially when we have growing food insecurity, as well as massive economic and environmental injustice. So we spent about 6 to 8 months looking into why are we wasting so much food? And there's countless reasons. I mean, overstock exists because of faulty labels or canceled orders or just damaged packaging and so forth. And companies are looking at, right now it's just cheaper and easier to throw food out than to manually coordinate and find the right end user. And we have companies that are worried about liability. But many people don't know that there's legislation in place to protect people from donating. So unless you have gross negligence or malintent, you cannot get sued for donating food. So that is a myth that I want to debunk. So the legislation in the US is called the Good Samaritan Act, and up in Canada where we are is called the Good Food Donor Encouragement Act. So companies that are hiding behind this myth of liability, it's actually incorrect. Nobody has ever been sued in the history of the US or Canada for ever donating food. The second reason, of course, is brand. So companies are very protective of their brand. They don't want to just give out food and worry about maybe it being dumped on the side, and so they need to protect that. The cost, the head of sustainability of Walmart calculated said it's actually 10 times more expensive to find a new home for their surplus food than it is to throw it out. So 10 to 1, that's an extreme ratio. And of course, time. It's very time consuming to find new recipients for your end suppliers. So a company that wants to donate has to call around to different charities. Can you pick this up? Can you coordinate? And so we're finding that it's very time inefficient to donate this food if you don't have the existing channels in place. And so our team, we sat and we contemplated, like, okay, how can we solve this inefficiency? How can technology allow us to optimize our distribution channels so that we can waste less and feed more? And so we looked at building a food rescue marketplace. So we're calling it MESH. It's a large network that helps integrate demand and supply and optimize how we move food. So we match unsold food to secondary markets, food charities, purchasers, people who can repurpose that food. If it's ugly fruits and vegetables, juice trucks that don't care what it looks like, they just care that it's organic. So essentially what we're doing is we're matchmaking. And instead of asking if you like long walks on the beach, we ask if you like bruised bananas. And we ultimately try to find the best connection. And we want to make sure that we help reroute that food so that we create what's called a closed-loop food system. So what it does is it helps on both sides of the supply chain. So we have the demand side. Our software is where you post, exchange, and report. It's very simple, and it integrates with existing inventory. So it helps companies access new markets for if they have this surplus. It makes it easy, and they can control who that goes to. It also allows to track customers and orders, giving you a bit more information and data. Improve traceability in the event of recalls. You know exactly where your food is going. It also allows for easy reporting and analytics, and of course automated payments. Because if this is going to work, we have to make sure that it's very convenient and easy for suppliers to help redirect that surplus food. And then on the other side, it helps, of course, feed more. So what we've realized, we've actually recently partnered with food banks, BC, where I'm from, and what we've realized that there's a lot of pain on their end too, because they are often dumped food that just lacks in nutritional quality. They actually get like marshmallows and dog food, and they end up spending tens of thousands of dollars trying to, in tipping fees, getting rid of food that's just not edible, and there's not a lot of dignity with that. So with Mesh, it allows charities to control the food that they receive. It empowers them to make more informed choices. It gives them the nutritional information. And what it also does is it allows them to take what they want and pass on what they don't without the fear of tarnishing the relationships with their donors. So we help just reroute until we find that match. And then if the food expires and we can't find a match within the human segment, then it gets rerouted into the waste streams. So we help find creative uses where people can repurpose that to make industrial products or compost or animal feed. But some of the other benefits that we offer to the community is the redistribution logistics. Because what we're finding is that there's a disconnect between the large volume of food from large food processors and the capacity of smaller organizations. So a shipping container of avocados is, right now, the processor just wants to get rid of it, but the smaller entities just can't take it, so it's all or nothing at this point. And so what we're doing is we're designing our software to help redistribute that into smaller entities. Think of it almost like crowdsourcing. So people could take small portions, and then when the order is full, it gets released into the smaller entities, allowing it to distribute that food to more people. We're also building in transportation and logistics and storage options, because we're finding that these are bottlenecks and barriers to helping that food move. So we're in our beta stage. We're actively working in British Columbia, and so far we've moved actually almost 50,000 kilos of food. So in pounds, I guess that's about 80,000 pounds of food. And as a social enterprise, we measure various different things. So we measure our social, environmental, and economic impact. The emissions saved are 88,000 kilos, and our meals provided is almost 80,000 meals so far in about 4 months of beta. And Dea Foods is actually our first company, our first visionary partner who's believed in us, and we're working together to help us reduce waste and feed more. So what we're asking for are for companies and organizations that want to build this movement and build an online donation or discount community in your community and help us save money, reduce waste, and feed more. Thank you. That was very short.
So we're going to have a little bit of time for questions. Thank you to all three of you. And as you know, I admire what each of you does so much. And I think what this panel really shows us is that there are so many different ways to approach this conversation. And whether we look at school nutrition or community and connection or saving and repurposing food waste, really taking a thoughtful approach to this, truly understanding the problem and then developing a solution has been so valuable to each of you. So I'm curious and want to pose this question before we go into audience questions of what advice you would give to natural products companies to start approaching the food access and reducing costs of products, making sure that you're communicating and educating more people, or anything else that you've learned from what you're doing that a natural brand could take away and use to get involved.
Well, we've had some really fortunate partnerships with different organizations, and I'll use one as an example. We were at INFRA, the Independent Natural Food Retailers Association annual conference, and speaking there as well. And we built a partnership there with Badger Products. And we have a unit or another project at the cafe that's community driven as well, called the Giving Tree. And this tends to be hygiene products and things like that not everyone has access to. And it's been wonderful working with an organization that will donate products from Badger to us so that people can be safe from the sun, because we have many people in need that are constantly looking for shade. I mean, they are burnt, they are bug bitten, they suffer from illnesses that are completely unnecessary, that this should have happened to them, because they don't have a place to be. So working with a manufacturer or a product, people who produce products that can help people in need. I mean, think about what your products could do for people, and what kind of impact that could have for, a community and a number of people in need that just don't have those options.
Or do you have any ways that companies can get involved in, and I even see some brands here at Expo who are talking about ways to get involved in the food system, whether it be at colleges or high schools or elementary, but it seems like that's becoming more a part of the dialogue. How does that work?
Yeah, I think, yes. I don't know if I'm still on or not. I think there's definitely ways for natural product companies and companies to get involved. I mean, there's the obvious ways of, supporting nonprofit entities that are doing the good work in childhood wellness space, which is something we all are invested in, right? So we're all trying to improve the food system, and natural products people, we want to kind of change the palates of the next generations, right? To appreciate the food that in the system that they're trying to create. So there's definitely that. There's a lot of natural products companies that are starting to get into food. Back to the Roots, I think, as announced at this just a week ago, and is talking about it at this expo, about their new cereal is now in every New York school. For the breakfast program. So there's definitely ways. You have to be willing, I think, to think about your business in a different way. If you want to go into school food, you have to be willing to think about your margin in a different way, and you have to be you have to create a product that meets the USDA guidelines, because what you have now likely doesn't. So something you will have to kind of work with someone to make modifications on a product to get there. But there's a lot of companies that are doing that, and it is huge. And when I talk to some companies about how they're dealing with the margin issue, to try and get into school food, they look at it as part of the triple bottom line approach to their company. So, instead of donating X amount of money to a charity, they're going to reduce their margin on that channel, but it's part of their greater mission, and I think that's something to think about.
Thank you. Want to open it up? Are there questions from the audience? Yeah.
I was wondering for the three of you, how much are you using local farmers, and how much is farmers in terms of gleaning produce? Is that something that
So I'm just going to repeat it so we can capture this on video. But the question was, how much are you working with local farmers?
Yeah, I mean, farmers are, is this on? Can you hear? So farmers are a big component of the mesh exchange. Is less than 5% of food loss on farms is ever recovered. So farmers are losing up to 20% of their yield because of aesthetic imperfections. So what we want to do is really capture those foods and redirect them to people who can repurpose them, whether they want to dehydrate them and turn them into like chips or so forth. So farmers are a really essential component to our system. Yeah.
We work with local farms every day. We source all of our lettuce from an aquaponics operation year-round because we're in Colorado. So we have local lettuce every single day. We have a farmer who we're still working through. I don't know, how many pounds of pumpkins did we buy this year? 12, a ton, yeah, of heirloom pumpkins from a local farmer who is absolutely wonderful. We also buy onions from her, cucumbers from her, and she grew celery for us this year, which is very unusual in Colorado as well. So we build relationships with farmers, and then we buy a lot of our non-perishables too from the local food co-op, which is the organic store in town. So farmers are running in and out of the cafe all the time. As a matter of fact, they eat there a lot too.
And there's a strong local component, as you highlighted on one of the slides, to most of the school lunches that you're serving.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to farms and school food, local farms and school food, it's challenging. I'm not going to lie. Schools and districts have to opportunistically buy local produce, which requires. But it does require that you're cooking from scratch. So, if you're buying all your food processed, you'll never run into that opportunity. If you have a vendor contract with Sodexo, I mean, maybe they will run into that opportunity, but you're not going to run into that opportunity. You can't control that opportunity. So, like in Boulder, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but there was just this excess of apples. It was because of, it was because of the incredible rains we had, and we just had so many apples. And so apples became an affordable piece of produce for the school district at that time, and there was enough quantity for them. So opportunistically, Anne was able to purchase it and tie it into the menu.
We saw apples because we're just down the road from Boulder, and but we got all of our apples donated. Usually we support the local farms with, by purchasing their products, and we're very happy to do that and excited to do that because it's important to support the local farms. But my gosh, we also get some donations from local growers as well who have larger volumes. And apples was a huge thing this year, man.
Laura, you mentioned the price issue, and because you were able to get them at a lower cost, and you also see resistance from schools saying, no, we can't achieve this on this budget. So what is the process for educating new schools? And I think anyone can learn from this, because it's understanding that you can get quality ingredients at a relatively cheap price, and then also be producing something that fits within certain budgets. So what's that process look like?
Yeah, it's, for school districts, it's a big process to go from a place of heat and serve to cook from scratch. So, I have parents calling me all the time. We have a parent advocacy toolkit on the Chef Anne Foundation site, which actually walks you. It has so many tools on it for parents to engage with their school district to help try and change school food. But just know, from the time you start, you're doing it for the next generation of kids. You're not necessarily doing it so your kid is going to get a local beef burger next year, because that probably is not going to happen. However, the process is there, and we actually have a lot of grants at the Chef Anne Foundation, particularly the School Food Support Initiative grant. For a district that's ready to make the change and go from process to cook from scratch, this is a really comprehensive grant. It's about a $200,000 grant for a school district. We walk them through assessment, strategic planning, And then there's equipment grants that they can get within it so that they can actually start to build the plan to get them to where they're able to build high quality ingredient meals, but they have to cook to do it. That's really the only, with $1.25 in food costs, that's really per meal, that's the only way you can do it.
Thank you. Yes?
I have a question for Kathleen in particular. I'm wondering how at FOCO you cover your operating costs. People can come in and they can pay whatever they like because to make that scalable, which I hope happens because your story is wonderful, that seems like a very important area.
Well, in 2015 was our first full year in operation, so we had an entire calendar year. And we actually covered all of our operating costs out of our donation box, which was really amazing. We now have 3 employees, so we operate our entire nonprofit side as well as our restaurant with 3 people. And so those people have been added in slowly as we felt that we could add those positions. So now we're into our second, 2016 was our second full year, became much more challenging. So hence the grant writing. So we have been doing some grant writing. We do have pop-up events and things like that. And it's working. It's really quite amazing. One of the interesting things too, I think, that we see is it's not unusual because we have a donation box that's sitting right on the counter and then a square reader, and people make their donations with their credit cards by themselves. So they're operating both of these by themselves. So we don't see what people are donating. And it's not unusual for us to get notes in our donation box of people just writing a note saying, "Thank you for your trust." And I think that's kind of fascinating. So.
Kathleen, what is your goal and process when you said so many people are reaching out to you to replicate this model? Right. So ultimately, do you want to scale it, or will you be available to be an advisor for others? And second part of that question, have you seen retailers who are interested in having an element like this to their retail environment?
We were really surprised because people started reaching out to us actually before we even got open. And they were asking, how is it that you're doing this? I mean, you're getting so much traction and so much community support. And so it's been all through the process that we've been working with people, which has been quite fun. I mean, we've seen new restaurants or new cafes open in other communities, which is exciting. I just had a conference call last week from a man from Santa Barbara who's looking at opening a cafe or thinking about it. So we'll see where that goes. We haven't really seen so much on the retail side. We have seen, like, I had a meeting 2 weeks ago with a woman who wants to start a coffee house that is LGBTQ safe space. So she was reaching out to me to say, what can I do to get this started? You know, help me. You know, and these kids really need a space because it's for the youth. And so we're seeing different types of models popping up where there's a woman who's working with youth that have sensory issues or sensory disorders, and she wants to start an organization, or she actually already has, and she's doing cooking classes now to help people deal with some of the sensory issues they have surrounding food. So, you know, as she described it, we have the child who says, this food's too green, I can't eat it, or this food's too squishy, I can't eat it. And so working with them to reconnect with food and try to get beyond those things. So it's really interesting to see all the different passions that people have and based on their experiences, and how often it happens that they're looking for help, just want to get started.
I just want to end, I think, with a question, Jessica, and everyone weigh in on this, but this idea of measuring impact. I thought that was great that you showed that in your presentation of how you're actually proving that what you're doing is having an impact, and each of you are doing that. So how did you build that model out? Was it challenging, and why is that so important to your organization?
Yeah, thank you. So, is this on? Okay. So measuring is it's extremely important. I mean, you measure what matters to you. And so my background is in helping companies develop what's called a triple bottom line. So economic, social, environmental, and there's many other things, but these are the pillars of sustainable and a sustainable business. And so technology, one of the advantages is being able to track and measure these different things in a more automated and intelligent way. So it allows people to get these reports and share them rather than going through emails and spreadsheets and trying to do it on themselves, because the moment it's too difficult and too time consuming is the moment people stop doing it. And so that's really core to what we're building, is allowing organizations to both make it easier for them to redirect that food, but also easier for them to show it. There's a corporate social responsibility, and there's this big shift of companies that are trying to be kind of the progressive leaders against food waste and trying to build community relations. This is a big shift in the last few years, and so we want to help them, and we want to help them with their metrics. And there's certifications like B Corp. I don't know if many people are familiar with it, but it's very prescriptive on what measures a sustainable company. And there's multiple other certifications. So we're tying that into those certifications so that they get that certification easier.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
I'm developing a cooking simmering sauce, and the more I make, the less I have to pay my co-packer because of the quantity. So my question is, for Mara, are you guys developing like a central distribution center or a way to pick up the product for me? Because I could just order it, forget about my margin, I would just give all that to my co-packer to make it. But my margin that I would have to be dealing with would be distribution to you. How do I get it to you? So I think a lot of companies would actually just give you a private label, so to speak, product, so you could use with, as you cook from scratch, protein fried and then or whatever, and then adding the sauce. But how would you help us distribute that?
Distribute it. That's really interesting. And no one has actually said it in that way to me before. We have had discussions about in what way could the Chef Ann Foundation help product companies, a little bit about kind of what you're doing, but in a school way. You kind of see the triangle there in a little bit. Right now, distribution is on a district level, and most of them, depends on what kind of food you're getting. If you're getting, ingredient food because you're cooking from scratch, if you're getting processed food, but most of everyone is buying something from Cisco, and then they're dealing with other smaller distributors, and so there's nothing centralized right now. So it would kind of have to be working it out, like starting with a district to see if we could work out a distribution model with your organization in a district or a group of districts within a state. But it could be an interesting task. So I'd love to connect with you afterwards to see what we might kind of work on. I think that could be really cool.
Oh, I love that. I love what just happened.
I love it too. I was like, wow, that's great. I think that could be really interesting.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. I think that's all for us today. But thanks so much for coming to this session. Really such an important topic, and we appreciate you being here, and have a great expo. And stay hydrated.